You mean the martial law?
Yeah, otherwise I'm sure you'll cover it.
Well, feel free to ask.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andriy Shevchenko, and on behalf of the team of Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform, I want to thank all the journalists who tell the world the truth about our fight for freedom. This time we will be speaking with Mr. Fedir Venislavskyi, the representative of the president in Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. We'll be talking about the Verkhovna Rada sessions within the last couple of days, important resolutions which were adopted. And I would like to ask Mr. Fedir to start with the extension of mobilization and the martial law of Ukraine. Mr. Fedir, please. Good afternoon, dear journalists. I want to first of all thank you for the great job you're doing in the information front, because lately, according to the latest information on the during the session of the Council on National Security, Defense and Intelligence, the enemy activates the hybrid war component, so the countermeasures in the information front is very important component. As to the sessions of Verkhovna Rada in Ukraine yesterday, and another question was about the extension of the martial law and mobilization regime. I want to remind all the spectators and all the journalists that unlike Russian Federation, the first day of war, 24th of February 2022, Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, was the day where Verkhovna Rada approved the two decrees of the president. First was the decree on implementation of the martial law, and another on mobilization. We extended those law regimes a couple of times on martial law and mobilization. And yesterday, Verkhovna Rada extended the martial law and law on overall mobilization for another 90 days. We don't conceal the fact that we are in conditions of war and the mobilization is going on in all the fields. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be some fundamental changes in mobilization measures. After yesterday's resolution, the mobilization is going on according to the plan. The centers of mobilization fulfills their duties that are being set by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The representatives of those military specialties which are required in the front lines, in the opinion of the General Staff, are being mobilized. So the extension of this regime will not result in any fundamental changes. But as long as the war is going on, we will be forced to live under conditions of overall mobilizations. Do we have any questions on the floor? If I may start. So as we keep extending the martial law on and on, maybe we have some tip-offs from the life, what we have to change. Maybe we have to adapt the legislation in this regard. We keep on working all the time, 24/7 in online mode, on reformation on the legislation in field of mobilization. And I want to remind you that Verkhovna Rada adopted a number of legislative amendments which are related to the improvement of mobilization procedures and the procedures of booking, which are necessary beyond the security sector, which may complement to the normal functioning of the country's economy, and which may contribute to the to normal operation under martial law and provide normal functioning of the society. Yes, we keep working on those matters, and during the martial law we keep improving the legislation in terms of military on defense procurements. Yesterday the Parliament approved one important draft law on removing this secrecy regime for the procurements below 200,000 hryvnia, and for the needs of defense for more than 1,500,000 hryvnias beyond the electronic procurement platforms. all those procurements should be the information should be publicly divulged for better transparency. Other legislative drafts which contribute to the reinforcement of the defense sector, defense industry, and manufacturing, we keep working on those draft laws, and we will adopt relevant amendments as soon as it's necessary. Please remind for Ukrainian citizens and for foreign journalists what is martial law. Martial law is the law regime which is implemented due to the aggression of Russian Federation, which passes a lot of authorizations from local governments and central government to the from local governments to military administrations, regional military administrations. Now we see that in the majority of the settlements and regional centers, regional capitals along the front lines, there are military administrations established, which means that the military governments can solve in a prompt manner the issues related to repelling the enemy activities. And it also imposes a number of measures on the citizens about which we inform the Commissioner on Human Rights of the United Nations, which envisage some actions which restrict the civil freedoms of the citizens, which means the restriction for leaving the country, for example, or moving or transition of the businesses of the manufacturing facilities to military rails, so to say, is the restriction of the free sale of small arms. And, well, practically it means the blog posts that we found about, unfortunately, from the very first days of the war, within all those 30 days of independence. So those are the consequences of imposition of such law regime and a number of other restrictions envisaged by the legislation. Any more questions?
In national security media, can you explain how the extension of martial law will affect journalists? And also, have you seen any complaints from citizens that how martial law has created any problems, or have citizens pretty much gone in line with the government's requests?
Ну, насамперед, дякую за ваше запитання. Відповідаючи
Thank you for your question. Responding to the first part, how this law regime influences the work of the journalists. It means the freedom of their movement in the areas which may pose threat to their life and health, and it means the restrictions to the accreditation in the military units who fulfill their duties on repelling the military aggression of Russian Federation. So there is the journalists will not feel, unfortunately, so free in the areas of active warfare as they used to feel before 24th of February, but that's mostly related to the ensuring of the security in those areas. As to the citizens, we have to be conscious that not all of the citizens of Ukraine perceive the armed aggression of the Russian Federation as the necessity to comply with these or those requirements related to the security of the states. Some people try to leave the country in illegal manner, to leave the areas where they can be issued the draft notices, where they can be mobilized. That's not something horrific, because people may be afraid, but it's a matter of values that we should understand. It's on one hand there is integrity of our country, and on the other hand is the value of human life and restriction of their freedom of movement. Yesterday, the Parliament of Ukraine approved 2 new resolutions. We have new Minister of Internal Affairs. As a parliamentary actor, what's your expectations? Well, starting from the Security Service of Ukraine are Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence gave recommendations for approval of Mr. Maluk as the head of Security Service of Ukraine. He was nominated by the president himself. His evaluation of the work of Mr. Maluk was pretty high. Since that moment when he was appointed as acting head of security service, and his candidacy was approved by 224 votes by the majority, and us as the members of the Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence, we are informed about all the activities of security service of Ukraine. We are sometimes being pleasantly astounded, but we cannot divulge this information due to the reasons everybody understands, which we cannot divulge publicly. But I have to say that the security service of Ukraine fulfills their main duties in a very efficient measures in terms of military counterintelligence and general counterintelligence. We identified a lot of traitors who work in favor to the benefit of the enemy. Such traitors are being identified even among the higher command, among the higher military command, and there are some specific measures on criminal investigations imposed in their regard. As to the command of the Security Service of Ukraine, Mr. Maluk, in full understanding and cooperation with our committee and the Parliament of Ukraine, prepares the law on reformation of the security service on Ukraine based on democratic standards. Mr. Maluk fully supports the ideology, which is fundamental to the law, and as the direct participant of those sessions, I can tell you that Mr. Maluk was focusing his attention on necessity of finishing the reform of the security service of Ukraine, created to make it a Western type security service, which would not pose any questions regarding the tasks, in terms of tasks it's fulfilling. We work in very close contact and coordination with the command of the Security Service of Ukraine. Mr. Maluk is a combat general who does not hide in the rear. During these 11 months of the war, he was in the hottest areas, in the hottest spots, and he stands for the values of national sovereignty and integrity in all levels. As to the second appointment, the appointment of the Minister of Internal Affairs, Mr. Klemenko became the new minister, and the main goal of his activity is to preserve this positive vector of development of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which was started by Mr. Monastyrsky, because the projects that are presented for the public currently on the creation on new breakthrough brigades in the National Guard of Ukraine are the ideas which are being currently implemented. And I'm hoping that now, with that credit of trust that Mr. Klemenko has, he will demonstrate very good example of the function of the Ministry of Internal Affairs.
Question, are there any changes in the extension, or is it pretty much a continuance of the previous policy, number one? And do you think, so the previous martial law that was on the books before the extension, are there any changes, or is it merely continuance? And the second thing, because we're hearing possible that Russia may want to re-attack Kiev in the next month, do you see that there will be a need to revisit, again, any conditions that affect martial law?
Дякую.
Thank you for your question. Well, there's nothing new, no changes in the extension of the martial law. We extended it to the same extent, to the same scale as it was imposed on the 24th of February last year, starting from the beginning of the full-scale aggression of the Russian Federation. And as to the second question about the hypothetical offensive of Russian Federation on capital or other direction from different sides of Ukraine, just today during our session of our committee, we were hearing the reports of the representatives of all intelligence agencies of Ukraine, and for the time being we don't see creation of any offensive formations either in Belarus or other territories other than eastern part, I mean Lugansk, Donetsk regions, Avdiivka, Kupiansk, Bakhmut, and in part in the southern region, in Zaporizhia and Mykolaiv direction. So we see the full picture. We know exactly the number of weapons, personnel, and the threats. So we don't see any other threat other than from the south and from the east. So we don't expect any offensive operations to be repeated. So if there are no more questions on the floor, let's wrap up. Fedir Venislavskyi, the permanent representative of the president in Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Thank you. I call all the journalists to follow our announcements. Stand with Ukraine.